Should we do an introduction?
I typically don't do an introduction.
Really?
But for this one, since you're kind of out of the public eye, if you feel comfortable, you don't have to. But if you feel comfortable, how many doors are you at right now?
How many doors I have? I have 26 doors.
Nice.
3 of those are only rentals because I got rid of all my rentals. I only have 3 more to get rid of. All the other ones are notes.
What was your high point for doors?
My highest point was 32 doors.
Nice.
And then I started selling doors.
Why? All houses or?
All houses.
Okay.
Yeah. No multifamily.
We're not talking multifamily. We're not
I'm
talking
not talking multifamily.
37 unit apartment complex.
No. All houses. That has taken me about 5 years to acquire.
Yeah.
And all of those are producing notes, with the exception of 3, which this week, actually, I'm going to sell one of those houses. The renters moved out. They left them. They even stole the bed and the TV and everything. And I filed a police report. But
wow.
I'm going to turn that into a note, and then I'll be down to 2.
So you're getting out of the rentals completely, and what you're doing with those houses that you own now, you're selling on seller finance.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of notes do you require for that? Like, are you making the buyer pay 10% down?
Honestly, our down payments are not just 10%, because for a $200,000 house, that might be too much for someone. It just depends. Most of my houses that I do acquire, say I acquire it for $100,000, and I know my selling point, my buyer, which is usually, someone national out of the US, can only afford $200,000 and under. And then my interest is always at 10%.
Gotcha.
Some of my colleagues, some of my best friends, their interest is a little bit higher, and that's okay. But my sweet spot is anything under $200,000. I know I can owner finance it. And then my PITI will be, right under $2,000 or $2,100 or $2,200.
Okay.
But
cool.
I would say the sweet spot, truly, if you were doing owner finance, would be 160 and under, because your PITI is low enough where people are still interested. If your PITI is under $2,000, you will be able to sell it.
Yeah.
And you will be able to get at least a $15,000 down payment.
So when you're saying when you're buying, you want to be under $2,000 here in San Antonio, we're talking, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So different market. People in
Very
California
cheap.
are like, wait, what? Under $2,000? Yeah, everybody wants to get that.
Yeah, in San Antonio, it's affordable still.
Yeah. So then you can go ahead and sell it. Where are most of your homes located in San Antonio here?
Southside.
Okay.
So all my homes are on the south side. I don't think I own a home outside of Southside because it's the most affordable.
I've only lived in San Antonio for about 2 years. Okay. I think I understand what Southside is, but for people that might not know, where does Southside begin and where does Southside end?
Yikes. That's a tough one. You know why? Because I talked to other investors and they grew up on Southside, which means we're south of 35 South, like Von Army.
Gotcha.
They consider that Southside. But we Southsiders consider Southside as soon as you see the sign where it says 35 North, from like where Zamora South hits, and then you keep going, and where military hits. But then again, you have military here off of, Wurzbach Parkway. So you're just like, okay, which side am I in? So Southside to me is, I would say, south of downtown within 10-mile radius.
Okay.
That would be Southside to me.
That little pocket in there. It kind of wraps all the way around. So there's not like an east side, west side. There's just kind of, this is the south side, right in this.
South of downtown, 10-mile radius. So that's where I grew up, south of downtown. I actually was living on the northeast side, but taxes were crazy and I needed to be near. I always feel like you need to be near where your houses are at. Yep. Because if anything happens, sure, we delegate and we hire people for this stuff. But if anything happens to them, I want to be there. I had the SWAT team knock on my door and say, hey, you're the owner of this, because I have my address. And I'm like, yeah, why? Do we have permission from you to go into this house? Because although the renter rents it from you, they're not the owners. Yeah. You're the owner.
So what do you do in that situation when the SWAT comes knocking on your door?
I just say,
you go, yeah, okay, go ahead.
And I just tell them, okay, what address are you? First of all, what address are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because they automatically think that's your one house or your one rental. I'm like, first of all, what house are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then second of all, let me see if it's truly a rental, that it's not an owner finance, because sometimes the books don't update super fast or with the county, you know? So I'm like, first of all, let me see. And I was like, if it is a rental, yes, it does belong to us. And if you really need to get in there, I need to know to a certain extent of what you can share with me, why you need to get in there. So for this one there was a stolen car on the property and it was hidden in the garage.
So should you go back behind the scenes and like text him, be like, hey, the squat's coming over, get out of there.
Not if they're problem people, because I literally, the ones that just moved out, they ended up stealing everything. So I was like, why am I even going to give you a heads up? I cared for you, you know? So they never know that I'm the owner. My husband I always say the partners. I always say, hey, like I'm one of the managers here. I'm only the messenger. Yep. So I always tell the partners, which is my husband, like what's going on with the property. Jacob doesn't even know what goes on with the property. Sometimes I'm like, hey, by the way, we're evicting someone. You have to show up to court. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I'll show up. What time? Tell me. So yeah, in that case, I just go back to my Excel sheet and see, okay, who's at the property? Do you really need to get in? I'm not going to deny if they're, really need something. I'm going to allow them to. So yeah, they ended up going in there and basically raiding the whole house. And I did tell him, I was like, I just want you to know, you better not break any walls and you better not do any damages to this property. But yes, you are allowed in there. Yeah. So they were kind enough to not go break any walls or anything.
They kicked the front door in, but...
Yeah. So of the garage. Yeah. So yeah, it was super crazy. That's what you get when you do rentals. So that is why I don't want to do any rentals anymore.
That's what you go and do rentals on the Southside.
Oh, you're messed up. not just on the, yeah. Maybe if I switch to rentals on the north side, that would, you know what? But that happens everywhere. Yeah. We have our private money lenders that they know where we live, because when you borrow money from a private money lender, you have to fill out a sheet. Typically, if they're doing it the right way to protect themselves, you fill out a sheet for them. I literally just made copies of this sheet for every closing for them already. Yep. But you fill out a sheet and you have to put on there your personal address. So when they see my personal address, they know that I moved back to the south side. So they're just like, do you really want to live on this? I was like, you don't get it. It is the best.
This is my home.
And I was like, okay, let me ask you. I said, last weekend, was there a shooting over there on the north side, like 281 and 1604 at a party? And they're like, well, yes. And I was like, there you go. There can be anything bad can happen on any side of town.
Well, and you know this, and most people don't, but I actually lived on the south side for a while.
Really? Where on the south? Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah. Okay, well, then you lived, you don't have to disclose, but you lived in my hood. Literally. Yeah. Okay, on that street where you lived, I lived on 335. That's the house that raised me. So that house was an awesome house to be on the south side, but it had 2 living rooms. It was awesome. Yeah. But I lived on that street, 335. That was I think I had told you that already.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah.
I think you did.
Yeah,
so.
It wasn't bad, right?
Yeah. It wasn't bad. No, I actually loved the south side. Like the culture of the south side. It was like, as long as you're not like trying to do something, criminal, like everybody really respects you, right? And there's what I really loved actually, because we had an Airbnb right there, and our neighbors around us would tell us everything that was happening there.
They're nosy.
They're nosy, but for a good thing. Like they're not nosy when everything's going right. Like somebody checks in, it's fine. They knew that it's an Airbnb, but if anything was going on, we actually had a crazy story at that house. I probably won't tell on podcast, but. We've had our share of Southside problems down there. And that's one of the reasons I was like, I just need to get rid of this thing. I was like, this thing is not my cup of tea, And every time I'd show up there, I'd be walking in and people would be like, oh yeah, that's Evan. I forgot. Like, what is he doing here?
Oh yeah, that's one of the owners. Don't worry. What is this cowboy doing here on the south side?
When we first bought the house, the neighbors thought we were a cartel.
Wow.
Yeah, because they were seeing, we were using kind of as a real estate office when we first bought this place. It was this huge house for the viewers, but it was like a massive house, white elephant in the area. And we were using a real estate office, so people would come and go with nice cars all the time. And our neighbor, actually a good friend of mine now, Anne, bought the house right across the street. When she moved in, she's like, ask the neighbors, like, who lives there? And they're like, the cartel does. And she's like, oh no, we just bought a house across from the cartel. And they said, no, they're really nice people.
Yeah.
And she's like, cartel, nice people. Like, I don't know about this. And she came to find out later. I went to introduce myself and I was like, hey, how are you doing? I'm the neighbor. And she's like, I know.
That's funny.
And I'm dark, right? So I look like, a lot of people confuse me. They think I'm Mexican, right?
Yeah.
And we went over there and I said, no, I said, what's, are you feel kind of like distant. Is something wrong? And she's like, no, nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong. And I'm like,
nothing's wrong. I'm just going to call the cops on you pretty soon.
Yeah. And I said, hey, like, we're just regular people. Like, like, I know we have a big house, but we're just regular people. And she goes, can I ask you something? I said, yeah, what's up? And she goes, you guys aren't cartel, are you?
Oh,
and I started laughing and I was like, no, we're not cartel. We operate business, real estate business here. And it's an Airbnb. And she's like, oh my God. She's like, I thought you were cartel. All the neighbors, by the way, think that you're cartel.
That's hilarious. You should have kept it going. You're like, we are cartel.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we're the nice cartel.
Yeah, that's hilarious. You're the real estate cartel.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Like, hello. Yes, we are. We can make money like the cartel.
Yeah.
But the right way, the good way.
The legal way.
Yeah, the legal way.
And record everything we do.
Yeah. So note to sell.
Yeah.
Don't buy a huge house on the south side.
So that was one of my first mistakes getting to real estate. Like, I was just kind of looking for anything and everything.
Yeah.
And like the niche is the key, right?
Yep. Niche is key.
Until I got into land investing, I was kind of looking at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I tell everybody now, like, especially wholesalers, like when they first get in, I meet a lot of wholesalers, and then when they first get in, they always ask, or we're talking, I'm like, what do you do? And they always say, well, I'm in real estate. I get that. You're wholesaling real estate. What kind of real estate? They're like, well, you're just real estate.
Everything.
And I'm like, that is never going to work long term. Like, you have to be proficient in one area. It can be single family residential. It can be multifamily. It can be land. It can be infill lots. It can be offices or warehouses. Like, niche down, because everything has its own learning curve, right? And I know you know this from your video you had on a podcast last year about your water meter.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into that a little bit and explain, like, the things that you know about single family residential that, like, most people don't?
I have been doing single family. In August, I'll be 7 years, close to 7 years. And I've been doing it for a super long time. I've done my flips. I started off wholesaling initially. Then I started doing Airbnbs. And then I started, flipping and building my own portfolio. But through that, I've been through so many walkthroughs. A wholesaler will send you a property and they will want you to go walk through, see who's the highest bid, because we need earnest money right now. And that's how you got the great deals 3 years ago, 4 years ago, because as soon as you showed up, you had to make the decision on the spot. So if you ask the wholesalers that I'm used to working with, I will purchase a house. If it's a good deal, I will tell you it's a good deal. If it's a bad deal, it's a bad deal. But the first thing I look at all the time, and how I know how someone is new, right? Or it's their first flip, or, they just got approved for their hard money loan, is if they just walk inside the house automatically. And I don't do that. I'm known in the city because I'm typically the only woman. There's very few investor women. I always say this, people are like, man, you really don't like realtors. And it's not the fact that I don't like realtors, because to be honest and transparent with you, I am a realtor. Yep. Right? It's in the niche, right? So I don't expose that, because I don't want people to call me and say, hey, can you represent me? Because that's not what I do for a living. What I do for a living is I do owner finance. And what is my goal? Build a bigger portfolio for my family and for my baby, who is 5 months today.
Oh, yeah. Congrats.
So that he can, get that generational wealth and still be getting payments, be the bank essentially. Yep. So I know when someone is newbie, or maybe they haven't been doing it long enough, when they're not checking properly if the house is, how much work it needs. The first thing I do is I go to the water meter. If that meter is running, my first question to either the wholesaler or the homeowner are inside the house. I tell them, hey, I'm the contractor, because you had to play the contractor role.
Yep.
I say, hey, I'm the contractor. I was just wondering if there's any, washers running, or is there any showers running? They're like, no, there's not. Why? And I said, will you do me a favor and will you go and shut off all the waters? Just make sure you will help us out a great lot. And she'll be like, oh, well, why? Well, because there might be a leak. If this water meter, and I show them, I said, come here. I want to show you this just for your next house, or if you are purchasing a house, come look at this water meter. If that little triangle is spinning and all the water inside is shut off, what does that tell you?
You got a leak.
Yeah, you got a leak. Common sense, right?
Yeah.
But not common sense to the normal person that is doing this as the first time or second time or third time. I honestly didn't know that until probably my 12th flip when my private money lender, and he's very old school. He's late 60s or 70s probably, and he's been doing this for a very long time. He's like, young lady. He's super country like you too. Yeah. He's like, young lady, let me show you something over here. I'm like, okay. Well, he was showing me like, come look at this. And we just know that there's a leak. Well, let's account for that because we already know there's a leak. Same with electrical. Like, why are you going in there and seeing like sheetrock is cheap? We already know that. Sheetrock, tape and float, paint. Yeah, but you really have to look at the big ticket items, which everyone calls them the 5 big ticket items. But my biggest expense is always literally plumbing.
What are I don't know this. I really don't.
You don't?
I don't do.
Because you do land.
I don't do residential.
You don't even know.
I am scared of houses. But
they're scary. Yes, they are.
What are the 5 big ticket items?
So plumbing, electrical, HVAC, oh my gosh, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and foundation and roof. Okay. So sorry, I had a brain fart. But plumbing, electrical, HVAC, foundation, roof. Okay. So those are your 5 big ticket items. Roof, I know how much I have to pay for a roof. I mean, my labor is pretty cheap. I know I can get it down to $6,000 to $9,000. That's a cheap roof, okay? Yeah. A normal, median household roof. Foundation, I do not buy anything. All my wholesalers that sell to me, they know I do not buy anything. Don't even send it to me if it has foundation issues.
Why?
I don't
want to look at it.
Because I already learned my lesson. Took me longer. I had longer holding costs. I just won't look at it. Sell it to someone that will want to take that on, and they're either pros at it or they're either newbies. And I always try to tell them, like, if you're a noob, please stay away from that because it's longer. They're like, no, I can do it. I'm powerful. I'm like, okay, but who wants to work harder and not smarter?
Well, then it has potential to mess up your plumbing too, right?
So then there goes your plumbing. My most expensive thing all the time is the plumbing and the electrical. So that's what I care for. Maybe other people care for other things, but for me, I just want to know that my plumbing and my electrical is good because everything else to me is okay. And I just don't ever worry about foundation.
Gotcha. How do you check electrical?
Electrical, I go to, so super cool. So we became really good friends with our electrician and he showed us, okay, obviously open up the box and see the switches, but how many switches you should have in the electrical box. I just know that if it's a normal size house, I should have at least 2 rows of the switches because more switches you have, the more power you have to, have more stuff. If not, you'll have to update it. And obviously if it's still a fuse are those little circles, then yes, you're going to need an updated box. But I don't purchase those houses anymore that still have the fuse box. No older homes do I purchase. Not even in this market anymore. I mean, in this market, it's not competitive anymore. So I'm not really, I get to pick and choose. I mean, the super cool friends that I have that do send me properties and they want me to buy, I'm typically the first one that gets that property. And then if I don't buy it, they blast it out. But because I've built those relationships with them,
you first.
And I know, and I have 2 super cool high-end flips right now, and those were not those were expensive, but they're not expensive to fix because it's just paint and carpet. So I think you can still do those deals, especially in this market where it's not. I don't know about land, but I don't feel houses are super competitive right now since interest rates went up, since. I feel like flipping was a fad for a little bit.
Yep, definitely.
And I don't feel like it's a fad anymore. I feel like it's kind of slowed down a little bit.
I think all of real estate was a fad for a little while.
Yeah.
Especially right after COVID. I mean, people were leaving the jobs, either intentionally or non-intentionally, getting laid off or whatever, going on unemployment. They're like, I need to do something. And they're like, real estate's going crazy right now. You can buy a property and sell it the next day and make $40,000. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
Right. So I think a lot of people came in that time, and it was funny because when I first got into real estate, everybody was like, dude, just buy it and flip it for 40. And I'm like, well, what happens if the market turns? And they're like, the market isn't going to turn. Like, we're like, dude, you're losing all this money. And I probably did lose a lot of money by not just buying properties and flip them for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. But when I bought the ranch, I knew that the market was about to turn. And I was like, I need to secure this for a good price so that I can go in and make money on this when the market turns. And it did right afterwards, right? When we were closing on, the market was turning.
You bought it at the right time. And it's always, people always say that, like, it's about when you buy, you know, that you're going to get your profit. It's cool that you say, I knew the market, or you felt that the market was going to change and you already knew that you had to have a game plan. There's this, I always forget the name of the book, but it was so good. I know the name of the author, but he's a local investor in San Antonio, and his name is Eric Singerhausen.
Okay.
And the first few chapters, he talks about kind of, I can relate to it because I focus purely on owner finance. I focus on creating notes, leveraging notes. Have I sold a note? Yes, I've sold one note. Do I want to sell anymore? I don't know. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. That's what I always tell people. Are you going to sell them? I'm like, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. Let me just figure it out. Right.
Yeah.
However, he talks about in his third chapter, probably, where him and his partner are talking about, hey, we have all these houses. We flipped them. We did great, but they've been staying on this was back in 2008. We flipped them, but they're on the market and we're out all this money. And that's when he starts talking about owner financing your way to freedom. I think that's what the book is called. But look it up. Eric Singerhausen. You should actually have him on the podcast because he is super great.
Yeah, I'd love to.
He talks about how he already had a plan. How he's like, okay, if this isn't going to sell traditionally because no one's, you know, buying FHA conventional VA, I am going to have to come up with a plan B. And his plan B was, let's owner finance everything. So that is how he describes how he kept his head above the water. So when this happened, you know, when we had this downtime, I feel like it's still happening right now because interest rates are so high still. I remembered that book. I took that book out and I said, okay, Rosa, breathe. It's going to be okay. You know, if you're not going to flip, if you don't continue to flip as much, what are you going to do with your houses? I was like, okay, what would Eric Singerhausen do? And I always tell him, I'm like, if anyone will ask me for education, I say, don't pay me. Pay Eric Singerhausen or pay Mitch Steven, who are amazing owner finance people that have been doing it longer than I have, probably since I was in diapers. But I started doing that. Okay, cool. How you said, let's come up with plan B. I was already planning. Let's start owner financing all the rentals. That's why we don't have any more rentals anymore because we had to start owner financing everything out.
Wow.
Can you imagine if we still had rentals, how we would be doing it? You couldn't do it. I posted something last week where I said, if you're still doing the burst strategy, you know, you're buying, you're fixing it up, and then you're refinancing, and then you're renting it out. I don't know how people are doing it because as an investor, you're still getting an interest rate of 7.25, 7.55, 8.25. And, you know, the sevens are with an amazing credit score. Yeah. Shout out to my husband, amazing credit score. But
that's why I married him.
That's why I married him. You know, you want to ask these questions before you get married. Yeah. Hey, what's your credit score? But
note to self.
Hey, what's your credit score? Because we're gonna need it. Yeah. But you know, shout out to my husband. This is even with an amazing credit score, and you're still getting those high interest rates. So we weren't making much on our rentals. So that's when we're like, okay, we need to stop renting. Let's breathe in, let's breathe out before this tank, you know, blows up.
Do you see a correction coming now into the future of the market?
I hope so. I don't know. I mean, I really hope so. It doesn't affect me though.
Yeah.
I will never let a market affect me. I will figure it out.
Yeah.
I will, in a creative way. I know everyone thinks owner finance is like sub-2s. That's the fad right now. Sub-2, sub-2, sub-2. But there is a way to do owner finance without having to purchase sub-2.
Yep.
Now, if you want to learn how to do that, that does take a lot. You would have to pay the big guys to learn because they've been doing it for over 15, 20, 30 years.
I've heard before real estate follows a track. And really a lot of things do the same way, but real estate in particular, you basically have a scale. You have -2, -1, 0, +1, +2. You can fit every market correction and every upswing into the scale. +2 being like COVID, right around after COVID, market was going crazy. It was a +2. And then the market will swing. Sometimes it'll skip +1 and go to 0. On that scale where maybe -2 is the '08 crash, where do you think we are right now from that -2 to +2?
Probably right in the middle, because everyone, the experts, because my husband doesn't watch TV. He watched podcasts and the news and no, it's like a no bullshit type of Instagram and media stuff. But when he puts it on, I do listen, right? My husband's the numbers guy. So I'm always out there. I'm the face of it. But my husband is truly the background. And from what I hear is because of the election, they do want to please the people for you to vote for someone. So supposedly interest rate, I would say right in the middle, because it can either get worse or it can get better. Yeah. I'm right in the middle. But it is okay depending on what you do in real estate. I don't know how it is for land, but for me, I truly don't care if it is great or if it goes right, it goes right. If it goes left, it goes left. But it is okay for me because then I just adjust. I always tell people, I'm just like, I just adjust. If it goes right and high interest rates keep going up, great. Because when someone comes to me and says, hey, Rosa, I want to buy a house for me, I'm like, oh, my interest rate is at 10%, 11%, 12%. Imagine if rates would go up to 14%. They would be like, dang, I want to buy a house from you because your interest rates are a little bit lower, even if it's at 1%. Or say interest rates do go down, right? Now the government will be very mindful of like, okay, who are we going to qualify? And those people that don't qualify with the bank are going to come to me and get qualified with me. So I really don't get, I don't worry about that because no matter what, I'm always going to have a buyer because there's always going to be people that don't qualify traditionally with the bank, either for bad or for worse, so it's okay. Like, I don't know how it is for land. I guess it's the same because even if it's a house, it's a land, it's a car, whatever. Interest rates play the part, right? Whether they get qualified with the bank traditionally or whether you decide to own or finance one of your land lots, right?
Well, the scariest thing in land is that, and this is different than residential. People say land always goes up in value. That is not correct at all.
Really?
Since the 1900s, land has crashed twice. When it crashes, it's very slow. It's almost a trickle. It'll trickle down relatively over 5 years, and it'll hit a bottom, usually around 30% drop from the recent all-time high. But it'll stay low for the next decade. And it won't hit that all-time high. So the scariest part of buying land is buying it at because it's going up, right? It's going up. It's buying and then cusping over that, and now it's in a down period for 5 years, and then staying in that as a decade before you hit that all-time high again. So what I always tell people is if you're going to buy land, try to buy it 30% off, because at least you can exit over the next 5 years.
Wiggle room.
Yep. And you have an out plan. Now, that's just historical. It happened once in the 20s. It happened again in the 80s. And that's actually in the 80s is the reason that banks don't particularly like to loan on land, because what happened in the 80s is that there was basically a way to protect the farmers and people that had bought land or sold land. They were able to reverse the note through an act. And the banks, when they were loaning on that, they were kind of cut out of that. They were, hey, you finance this land way over value. This is your problem. Yeah. So that's why banks
get us out of it.
Yeah.
We don't care what you do for the land. It is your land. Figure it out.
Yeah. So banks like to see you put down larger down payments on it.
No wonder. I always wondered. So I'm in the process, God willing, right? Within two years, I know that we could probably make it happen sooner, but I do want to buy 20 acres because I went over to a buddy of mine's ranch, and 10 acres was too small, 20 acres was just right, 30 acres was too big. So I'm right at the 20 acres, and I'll have to hear from you what you think, right? But when I was looking at financing and so on, I was like, man, I wonder if banks lend on this. And yeah, most banks want a house on there, or you have to buy it as a package.
Yep.
And you were kind of talking about it outside, where you must buy it as a package because they're guaranteed that there's going to be, I guess, an asset in their brain. There's going to be a house on there. So now there's worth
more intrinsic value on that property. Yep.
That's crazy to me. And dang, why wasn't I born in the 1800s? 1900?
Well, so the crazy part is land does skyrocket. And that's why people don't think it drops, right? So my grandfather sold his, I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to just guess on this. It'll be close. Sold his property, sold his part of the ranch for about $100 an acre. That land, and that was in the 1980s. So that land is now worth approximately $4,000 an acre. We're only 40 years away, and it's went up, 40x, right? So that's where people think, oh, land doesn't drop. It doesn't, and you're actually in a really good position if you're buying at 30% of value, because you're leveraging yourself for the next 10 years if it does start dropping, but you have the potential to make the 2x, 3x, 4x over the growth periods.
I had a friend, in the area that you're in, I had a friend, and her family recently, I was able to help her. Her family recently started selling off acres. And I was able to see what they were selling acres for. And they sold it to a builder, to a big builder. I won't mention their name, but I'm pretty sure they can guess which top 3 builders are in the area. But it was the Spring Branch area. So I was
this wasn't at the 305, 281 intersection, was it?
No, I don't think so. But I was like, how much are you? And I was helping them go through all the paperwork, because a realtor only knows so much. You kind of have to be a land expert, a owner finance expert, a title expert. So I was like, hey, you're my friend. I will help you.
Take note of that, all realtors right now.
Yeah.
You have to be a land expert to know a little bit about it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It is incredible where I get someone where they're like, I am going to represent this client. I'm just like, but are you an expert on what they're buying? So if they were buying land, are you an expert on that land? And if you're not, are you willing to learn and go above and beyond? So this friend was the other friend that I was talking about outside. So anyways, I was like, how much are you selling the acre for? We're like, well, my grandparents have it on the deed and I guess the paperwork where they could only sell, 1 acre at a time because they knew, they were smart like your grandfather and your parents, where they knew where eventually someone was going to buy them out, almost force them out. And I was like, can they do that? They're like, yeah, they can force us out. Like they can literally say you have no option but to sell. So they haven't forced them out yet, but at some point they will. So they're starting to sell already because they feel it coming. So like, might as well sell super high. So for an acre, they were selling it 6 figures to this builder for 1 acre. And I was like, okay, if you don't mind me asking, how much do you have left to sell? She's like, over 320 acres. Nice. I was like, oh my gosh, your grandparents bought these and her grandparents had like over 400 acres at some point, but they started selling them off by pieces and giving them and dividing them. I was like, oh my gosh, you have 300 acres to sell and you're selling them 6 figures to this builder and they're building, X amount of houses on this. I was like,
you're looking at $30 million payday or more. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? And I'm like, dang, they were smart. I just want to be that knowledgeable for my kids. And I'm pretty sure, for your future kids too, where you want to be that knowledgeable and you want to educate yourself enough where you can provide something for them as such. That's why when notes, like you say, you have to be a master at whatever you're good at. I'm a master at owner finance. I would never want to go learn about I will learn about land, but I can just hire you and you're my friend. I could be like, hey, can you teach me about it? Because I'm about to buy 20, 30 acres.
Yeah.
But with mine, it's I want to build wealth off of owner finance because I truly like it. I like the paperwork. I like the servicing. I like what it takes. I like changing people's lives. I like someone crying at the closing. I know that sounds bad, but crying at the closing table because they couldn't qualify traditionally. And I was able to qualify them.
So I'm probably a little bit different on the leaving the inheritance part.
Yeah.
And I've told this on the podcast before, but my family will leave me a little bit of inheritance, but relatively I walked away from my inheritance. It has to do with generational farms. A farm today can't be split up and sustain 3 families. We have 3 kids in our family, right? You can build it up to that level, and then, but the problem with generational, once you split, it becomes really hard to keep farming. So our parents always told us, if you want to farm, we'll make it work for everybody, but if you don't, then you're walking away.
Yeah, because you have to be there present. You have to be there.
You have to be working the farm. You got to be there supporting your family.
I went to college in Indiana. See? So I know my roommate owned a big farm. She owned a dairy farm and she owned what do you call corn? What would you call it? Just corn?
Just corn.
But she would
I know there's a Spanish word for it.
What would you call corn? But yeah, she owned a dairy farm and she would say, if I want to be a part of the business, she owned Schenkel Farms. That's what it is in Indiana. She would say, I would have to be a part of it. I'm like, dang, I can see that because it takes a lot of work. Like someone has to be there supervising. So I can see how your parents or your grandparents said that.
I think now we have some employees, or they have some, they have some employees at the farm recently, just in the last year or 2. But it's all kind of blue collar, do it yourself type of thing. There's not employees. In order to have employees, you got to have, many more acres to have that. They're kind of transitioning right now because my parents are getting to the point where they're thinking that over the next decade, they might want to start retiring. So they're starting to implement that plan to go forward. But when my parents pass away, I won't have any inheritance in the land or in the farm. There'll be a little bit of inheritance that comes in the form of money. But that'll be the last thing. And when I say a little bit, I really do mean a little bit.
But can't they lease it? I hear that you can lease farmland as well.
My brother wants to farm. So he's taken over the farm. Okay. Since he's worked there, he's taken over. So when I think about generational wealth, I don't think about it as leaving the monetary value. I think about leaving skills, because that's what I've had to acquire. And that's really where the the fruit comes into generational wealth. If you can leave your kids a way to make money, now still give them support and still be able to provide as they're upcoming in their in their teens and in their 20s and in their 30s. If you can provide them support in a skill through monetary, great. But I actually will, my kind of plan would be to leave my kids nothing in form of generational wealth. Yeah. So for them
to figure it out.
Yeah, what I will leave them is skills. I've taught you how to create a finance deals. I've taught you how to buy businesses. Yeah. I've taught you all these things. I'm willing to help you purchase these through, I'm going to make interest on your purchases. I'm not just going to give you the cash, but if it is a good deal, I'm willing to invest in that business. Right. But when I pass away and my wife passes away, I don't know where it'll go to charity or whatever, but now you're on your own. You got to figure it out. And I think that'll actually, if that can continue passing down to generation to generation to generation, the prices are become billionaires one day.
Well, there's a cool video and I'll have to forward it to you. I have a business partner, one of my business partner, because I have a couple of business partners, but one of my business partners, he is a dad to a teenager. And I would call myself my baby is 4 months, but I help my sister raise her babies. And that's something people don't know when they say, hey, you're a first time mom. And I'm like, I'm not a first time mom.
I'm not.
I've been around kids. Well, I have a teenager and he's my nephew. And one of the things that you catch on once you have teenagers is, whoa, they're so blessed and they don't even know it.
Yep.
They're so blessed. And we have the tools to give them. I mean, now teenagers are into TikTok, YouTube, and they can make money any way. And if they're passionate about this tree right here, they can make money on this tree or creating trees because of social media. So my partner and I always talk about how don't we essentially screw it up for our kids where, they're spoiled rotten and they don't know the value of what is in front of them? Probably every dinner that we have, every lunch, we always end up talking about the boys, our teenagers. And we say we teach them the skills. And if they have a great idea, okay, come tell me your great idea. Cool. And let me see if you treat it like I'm your investor. I might want to invest in it. I might, but tell me your plan. How are you going to do it? And I would hope by the end of their teens that they would be able to prove to us that they're willing and they work hard enough for that business that they want to do. But it's so crazy how they don't realize the type of parents that they have, and they just assume. And we're very careful with that. And that's why we always talk with each other. It's like, hey, what are you doing? What standards are you setting? How are you doing this? Or like, hey, he got home super late tonight. How do you not get after someone? And, this is teenager talk. When you have teenagers, you'll know, but teenagers are tough.
I won't have teenagers for another 11 years.
It's okay.
At least.
But it's okay. But you will, and you'll call me up and be like, hey, how'd you do it with your
Rosa,
teenager?
help
me. I have teenage. It's real. When moms talk about teenager problems, the attitude is there. The know-it-all is there. But we were there at some point. Yeah. But we just talk about how, yes, we will leave, money to them, but we will not leave it if they don't know how to be discerning with it. And I'm a believer in the Bible even says, if you can be entrusted with the small things, surely you can be entrusted with the big things. So even at home, if they're not picking up their plate or even their shoes, if I bought them, we've worked hard for this. My husband and I have worked hard. We've sacrificed a lot. And yes, we will buy them nice things. And I'm super grateful that we don't have to tell them no if they really need something. For dance team, we just, we invest in whatever they want at basketball, soccer. Yep. However, we want them to know the value. So if they mess up some nice shoes that we just bought them and we're just like, dude, what's wrong with you? We just bought you some nice shoes. I wish when I was a teenager,
I could have had those.
I could have had those, but I didn't, because my mom was a single mother and I couldn't afford those. But if I had those shoes, I would take really great care of them. One of my teenagers is getting it. The other one is not. One of my teenagers is just like nice shoes all the time. He looks the best. It looks like he's going to a supermodel show every time at school, but my other teenager, she still has some work. But it's super nice for us to see the value in that. We're doing okay. And we'll figure it out with baby Jacob. His name's baby Jacob, my 5-month-old. But we'll figure it out with him. And I hope his brothers, cousins can teach him how to know the value. And I hope we're an example of that he knows the value. And I will always remind him, like, this is where your mom comes from. And the reason why I moved to the Southside and my partners and my private money always pick on me was because I truly didn't want for baby Jacob to grow up. I have a 5-year plan, right? My 5-year plan is after baby Jacob goes to kindergarten at the public school, we will probably think about homeschooling if that's what he wants, right? Yeah. But I do want him to realize where his mom come from. And surely if I did great, if I went to college and I got degrees, surely you can do the same thing at the same elementary I went to school with. But I want him to realize the difference. And I also want him to be a nice and kind human. I don't want him to be spoiled rotten. I want to set those standards of like, hey, be kind to everyone. I know that you don't necessarily agree with everyone, but you have to be kind to everyone. And as much as you invest in the world, it'll be given back to you. But be kind. And I want him to learn that.
I think you're kind of in this cycle. And I think it's good to recognize the cycle that you're in. So there's a saying, it talks about men. I'll reframe it to talk about women. In bad times create strong women. Strong women create good times. Or I don't know how it goes exactly. Is it bad times creates strong women. Strong women create good times. Good times create weak women. And weak women create bad times.
Yep.
Right?
It's a cycle.
So I think you're in that cycle someplace in between your strong woman, your mother, and then you're experiencing you're a strong woman too. but you're experiencing and you're creating that good time now.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be really careful of that. Good time can create weak women.
Correct.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cycle, and you can keep it for generations if you do it the right way. But it's definitely a cycle. And that's how I think about land and money too. Right. So I think of it as long of desperation creates riches. Riches will create wealth. Wealth will create riches. Riches will create despair. And then it goes back to the beginning. Despair creates riches, right?
Yeah.
So,
but you can always have the riches, how you said, if you water it properly and you're very, very discerning with it. Because who's to say you cannot change the path? Who's to say that I cannot change it? Because I don't think that financial literacy was presented to my parents.
Exactly.
But because I know financial literacy, then I could present it to Jacob. And that doesn't mean that if I am discerning with the wisdom that God has given me, I can truly, and Jacob is discerning over it, he can truly teach that to his kids. And it doesn't have to be broken, but you have to be very careful because it can happen. And it has happened. How you said, it's a cycle. The cycle will continue to repeat itself if you don't stop the cycle.
Exactly.
And I do believe that you can, I mean, even in Bible times, the cycles were stopped. You know, there was riches for years, for decades, for thousands of years. There was riches. However, like it can stop. So you have to just be really, really careful with it. It's super cool. I didn't think we were going to talk about family and kids and riches.
It's funny because like all of my podcasts have kind of gravitated around family, about relationships.
Interesting.
It might be just because I'm experiencing some of that, you know, for the first time in a long time in my life. I'm trying to learn more about that, get more perspective. I had Jerry Norton and Marie Norton on, and they have 10 kids.
10 kids?
10 kids.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they have 10
they
kids.
Don't.
They live in Puerto Rico.
That's crazy.
Their whole plan is kind of like what I was talking about, and I've stole little bits from them too. Like it's not all my idea, right? But their kids all contribute into the household, and they keep a balanced budget for each of their kids. They go and they reconcile it every Sunday. So if their kids keep the air conditioner on, they get charged, right? In the room.
No way.
If they want shoes, they take it and they put it in the budget. If they buy shoes, they buy socks, they buy underwear, whatever they buy, they are their own. They're basically doing a ledger with them throughout the week. Right?
This is your ledger.
Yeah. And then at the end of the week, if they reconcile and they don't have any money left, they have more chores to do. They have less time to just hang out with friends.
Interesting.
There is causation for overspending your budget, right? Or leaving the air conditioner on, or not being appreciative of what you have. And
not being discerning with what is given to you. So therefore, your negative balance, and now you have to do these chores.
Yeah, or you can't hang out for the little younger ones. You can't spend as much time outside, or you can't watch TV.
That's awesome.
Right?
That is, I'm going to have to look into it. I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't even know they had 10 kids. I've heard of the name before, but I didn't even know. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Bless their heart. Because
they have a couples retreat. You should think about going.
Yeah, our friend Brian was telling me about it.
Yeah.
And it's in Puerto Rico. By the way, people always say, what do you want to do? What's your goal? Well, one, I always say, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. But two, I actually do know, as long as I'm drinking pina coladas in Puerto Rico, that is my goal. Above that, I don't know what to tell you. I just want to drink pina coladas and be at the craps table when I'm like 40, 50. I'm 32 right now.
It was so much. When did you get into crabs? Because it was so much fun hanging out with you.
I got into crabs, honestly, probably when I got into real estate. You know why? Because I have a saying, and my saying is relentlessly protesting mediocrity. Right? And
say that again. That's
it good. Is relentlessly protesting mediocrity.
Wow.
And my first private money lender, who is in heaven now, he is the one that completely changed my life. I used to sell a lot of houses to him, and he knew that I had graduated college. He knew I was working for the federal government. He knew all my talents, and he sat me down and he said, surely you were made for more. You were not made to just sell me properties all day long. You're a smart woman. Stop being mediocre. And I'm just like, what? And when I always say it doesn't take rocket science, he used to tell me, no. It does take rocket science. To people, what you talk about it is rocket science. Do not belittle yourself. Because to land, you say, land, it's not rocket science. No, it is rocket science. Owner finance, it's not rocket science. It is rocket science to people. People literally pay to learn what we know. And it has taken us, forget about paying, it has taken us years to get to where we're at, right? Oh, yeah. And to learn our expertise. So he would always say, stop being mediocre. So I was like, so I should probably relentlessly protest mediocrity for the rest of my life. And he was just like, yeah, you should. I was like, okay, done. He's like, okay, when are you going to start flipping houses? I'm like, well, do you want to lend me money? He's like, yeah, I will. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I will lend you money. I was like, what? I didn't even know how it was to borrow money, how to ask. That's how I asked for my first private money lender.
He was like, she gets it.
Yeah. He's like, she gets it. Here you go. Here's the money. I'm like, well, what am I going to pay you? How am I going to pay you? Like, are you going to want monthly payments? And he's like, Rosa, chill. You're going to find the house, the exact same house that you wanted to sell me last week. You're going to close on it. I'm going to have a lien on it. You're going to repair. Okay, but who's going to lend me money? I had saved up money. I was like, is that enough? He's like, that's more than enough. He's like, but I'm going to lend you the money to repair it. I'm like, okay, cool. And then what do I do? He's like, then you're going to sell it. You're going to list it on there. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I listed, and then the rest was history. So my first private money lender was truly, he's in heaven now, but he was a man that changed my life and changed the life of generations to come because he gave me that shot. Everyone will always ask me, how did you get into real estate? Well, I started off wholesaling, and then that man saw what I was capable of. And he said, you're so much capable of more.
So how'd you get around that kind of people? Like, how, I guess for the viewer watching this goes, well, I don't have the guy that's just willing to give me money. You know, what would you say to them? How do you find that person? Because obviously I don't believe in luck. I believe in positioning. How did you position yourself?
I positioned myself by, and this is something that he taught me that I take with me everywhere. I don't have to be the smartest one in the room, but I do have to educate myself before I come into the room. So even for a podcast like this, right? What did I do before I came into this room? I looked at the other podcasts that you had recorded. He always said, be prepared.
Yeah.
So back to why I learned how to ski, why I learned how to play tennis, why I learned how to play golf, why I learned how to play the craps table. Because my first private money lender started talking about craps. He had gone and he had gotten invited by one of his best friends who is a top broker here in San Antonio. And he said, we're going to go to Vegas. And I was like, oh, cool. You're going to go gamble. You're going to play slot machines. He's like, no, we don't do that. We're going to a tournament. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, a poker tournament. And we're going to play craps and we're going to play roulette. I was like, holy smokes. I was like, you said that I need to learn this stuff, that because when I get into another room, I guarantee you those same people, his best friends, are going to have the same interests. So how do I position myself? I learn new things, and I learn the things that they like. So when someone was asking me about craps, so my second private money lender, guess what his favorite thing is?
Craps.
Craps. Yeah.
Yeah, you position.
And guess what? Yeah. I position myself to know about craps. And when I always ask him before I buy a house, or even after I buy a house, I always say, hey, how was Vegas? Because I know he goes to Vegas at least once a month or once every other 2 months. I don't know. I don't even ask him because he's always there. But I position myself. Or the next private money lender, my third private money lender, hey, you know, golf, tennis, basketball, and so on. I know enough to hold that conversation, but I educate myself. I take the time. I really dislike as a woman, and I always tell people I'm not a realtor because I don't want people to think that women can only be just a realtor. It's not the fact that I'll touch back on it. It's not the fact that I don't like them. It's the fact that surely I can be an investor. But I think we don't give ourselves enough credit because we don't educate ourselves. So I've even learned this from my mom. You got to educate yourself to position yourself into those rooms. And my private money lender, we'll call him A. So A always used to say, hey, can you take this meeting for me? Like, what? He's like, no, you've positioned yourself well enough that you can represent me. And I would make calls sometimes of buying. I remember he helped me buy a mobile home park. I'll never buy a mobile home park ever again.
Yeah,
not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Like, not me.
Yep.
Not me. A gun got pulled out on me, but that's another story. But he would say, he let me go in that room and I had to buy it from these Texas good old men that had that mobile home park for years. And they see this little Latina walking into that room. And he's like, no, you've educated yourself enough to have that meeting and to make that call. So I walked out of that meeting and he's like, so did we buy it? And I said, yes, we sure did. He's like, I told you.
How did that meeting go? I want to hear about that meeting.
Oh my God. You know what?
How much can you share about that meeting?
No, everything. No one has ever asked me about that meeting, actually. And I don't know if I ever told anyone.
Like, so you walk in, a little Latina girl, into a bunch of good old boys from Texas.
Yeah. Like
owned this for
6-7 of them.
50 some years.
Yeah. About 20 plus years they've owned it.
And they're looking at you like,
are you going to buy it? And they start asking me, okay, why do you want to buy it? And I say, because I believe that I can add value to it and I could potentially rent it out for more, or I could potentially sell it. I don't go, used to always say, don't go in there with no BS, because he would be able to call BS all the time.
Yeah, especially the good old boys.
Yeah. He was a good old boy himself. And I don't share who he was out of respect. But his family has been they were one of the first families to do real estate in the state of Texas.
Wow.
So he was the great grandchild of that person.
Yeah.
Of great grandpa, right?
Yeah.
But he always used to say, I'm a Texas good old boy. Don't give me shit. Like, cut the shit. Like that. He always used to say, I gave you an opportunity because I can call it out really quick. And I knew that you were real. So I just went in there and I said, look, surely it is not my money, first of all. And they started laughing. They're like, oh my gosh, thank you for being so honest. I was like, surely it's not my money. I'm going to play to my strengths. I'm going to make you laugh. Surely it's not my money, guys. Come on. Did you really think it was my money? And they're like, ha, ha, ha. I said, I do have a lender, but my lender is my partner. He wasn't able to make it today, but he always trusts what my decision will be. And I hope that we can make this deal work. And this is my plan. I plan to add value to it. I plan to put money in your pocket, and you're going to retire from this. Is that what you want? I said, is that what I always ask people that question. Is that what you want? And I always have them answer the question, because I don't want to answer it for them. Yeah. So is that what you want? Okay, if that's what you want, why aren't we signing this deal? So they were just like, no, that's what we want. So I hear you want to retire. I hear this is what you want for the mobile home park. I hear this is when you want to close. I hear you believe that we can add value to it. I hear you want it to go to a mom and pop and not to a big hedge fund. That is who we are. Is that what you want? And they're like, yes, that's what we want. Literally, I think the meeting took probably shortest 20-minute meeting of my life. And I walked out with the contract and we closed on it. But it was super cool. So he prepped me. So to go back, how do you position yourself into those types of rooms? You're always educated. I guarantee you, any room that I am in, I already know who you are, what you represent, what you like, what you don't like, how many kids you have, how many kids you don't have, if you're married, if you're engaged. I know everything, almost everything about you. Yeah. You know, just the basic stuff.
I'm curious, what do you know about me?
What do I know about you? See, you're different though, because I've known you for a few years now, and I've been able to have solid conversations. For anyone that doesn't know, everyone's goal should be to get invited to my birthday parties, okay? Because I throw the most extravagant birthday parties ever, because I celebrate life all the time. You're truly not guaranteed tomorrow. You're not.
Yeah.
You're not. And that's what A taught me. He's not here with us anymore. And before he passed away, actually, I said, I bet you would trade all this money to get just one day with your family and with your kids. And he's like, obviously. So you're not guaranteed tomorrow. So I celebrate life all the time. If it's your birthday, I'm celebrating you, right? I'm shouting you out, I'm throwing you something, I'm bringing you balloons. But for my birthday parties, I go all out. Or my baby showers or my kids' baby shower. Anyway, so I've known you that long, and I've known that you're just the pure, genuine person, that I don't have to be anyone else but myself. And I can share with you things that are confidential and you're not going to share them with anyone else.
100%.
And I like that about you, that you are essentially a Texas good old boy, just the new generation, right? You're like, welcome to Texas. You're a Texas good old boy. And those are the type of people everyone will always ask me, and this is the first time I'll say it on a podcast. Everyone will always ask me, so how much do you generate? So everyone will always ask me about the houses. Okay, 26 houses. It can go up, it can go down. It depends on the month, right?
Yep.
But the most important thing in a business is how much income are you generating every month, right? As opposed to your liabilities, how much you have outgoing and how much inbound, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm in a season of my life where this is the answer. The answer is I'm comfortable enough where I make all my lenders happy every month. I make the banks happy every month. And I still have extra to live the lifestyle that I need.
Yep.
At the pace that I want to live in. I don't wake up at 5 a.m. because I don't have a need to. I don't wake up at 6 a.m. because I don't have a need to.
Yep.
You're seeing me wake up at 7 a.m., 8 a.m. when baby Jacob wakes up, right?
Yep.
But that's because I've positioned myself to be there. And now if I want to go buy like a huge mansion that's $2-3 million, then yeah, of course, I'm going to, I have to position myself to be there. But right now I'm in a position where it's great. Like, thank you, Jesus, where I have enough to pay all of, my liabilities, which is great because it's real estate debt. Yeah. I always say I'm a debt woman walking. And they're like, oh my gosh, how much money do you owe? And my parents always tell me, oh, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's good debt, you know?
Exactly.
But I do generate a comfortable salary to myself every month where it allows me to live that lifestyle. So no, I don't live this crazy lifestyle that you see in Hollywood, but I live a comfortable lifestyle that's good for me because I don't want to overextend myself where I stop spending time with my babies, where I stop spending time with my husband, and that jeopardizes, the future where money is just money.
Yep.
Like money is just a tool.
Yep.
And then why are you sacrificing your money just for the tool?
Yeah. It's like I've shared this before, but it's the old fishing story. Have you heard this?
No.
So there's a rich man that goes down to like the Bahamas, and he's like, man, I want to go fishing. So he walks down to the beach, and there's this guy with a boat, just a small boat, and he goes, hey, will you take me fishing? The guy kind of looks at him and he goes, yeah, get in. He goes, what do I owe you? He goes, just get in, we'll go fishing. So they go out and they're fishing, and they catch all types of fish. Tuna and marlins, and they're just reeling in everything.
Mahi.
They're having to cut things off the line because they're catching too big a fish to fit in this boat. So they come back to the shore, and they got this fish full of boat, and this rich guy's just he's like, oh my God, that was the best fishing I've ever had. I've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars going on these fishing trips. Never have I filled a boat like this. He goes, we should create a business. He goes, I'll buy the boat, I'll buy everything, I'll buy all the fishing gear, everything. All I need you to do is to run this boat for me. And this fisherman is kind of thinking, he's like, okay, well, why do we need a bigger boat? He's like, well, we can make lots of money. We'll take these people on $100,000 fishing excursion. We'll fill the boat with fish. Those big marlins we had to cut off, we'll throw them in the boat. They'll hang them on their wall, and they'll pay hundreds of thousands for this. The fisherman goes, well, what is it? Well, what's the point of all this? And he goes, well, the point is we'll have a fleet one day. We'll sell it. We'll open an IPO and make millions of dollars. And then we can buy a small boat and a shack by the beach, and we can go fishing just to enjoy our day. And the fisherman goes, but I already have that.
Yep.
And I think that's like a perspective where I really fit in, where like, I don't need all the riches, right? All I need is wake up on my ranch in the morning, go pet my dog, go take care of my goats. And I mean, I like nice things. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I like to have nice things. But my goal, my success, and I've told this before, is my goal, my definition of success, I should say, is to be able to take a nap at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Yep.
And if I can't do that, then I do not have success.
Yep.
So.
That's funny that you say that, because used to take naps at 3:30 p.m. every day.
You used to?
No, A used to. So then
A used to. Yeah.
I used to, I started implementing it. Now I cannot because I have a baby. Yeah. But I started, it's funny, God be my witness, strike me with lightning. Just last week, I heard a friend saying, oh, you came at my nap time. I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, you came at my nap time. It's about to be 3. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember those. I was like, now I have a baby. I cannot take those anymore. But no, I truly know what you mean. 3 p.m. nap time. I wonder where that comes from, those 3 p.m. nap times.
For me, it came from my parents.
Really?
You know, my parents would go out, work in the morning, wake up, 8 o'clock, go feed the cattle, come back in 1 o'clock, have lunch. And then my dad and mom would sit down on the couch, maybe turn on the TV, and they both pass out for only a couple, like maybe 30 minutes or an hour.
An hour.
They get back up and they go work the rest of the day. And the only time that was different was in planting or harvest season, where you just had to go, because there's seasons to life, right? You can't do it all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, that was so nice. And I never, when I got into the working world and I got into utilities and running, nobody ever did that. And I was like, I mean, obviously nobody does that. Like when you look at the world today, nobody does that.
Yeah, your job wouldn't give you, 30 minutes to go nap for free, aside from lunch. But yeah, that's crazy. People are really going to be upset because they thought we were going to talk all about real estate.
Yeah. Well, we are. We are talking all about real estate.
People are going to be upset. They're like, Rosa, I thought you were going to give us all the nuggets about, that'll be the next one. But yeah, no, I'm so thankful you had me. And if anyone gets anything out of this, it's just life experience. Something that works for me might not work for you. And it's okay. Not everyone. I was just telling my mom on the way over here, she recently started killing it in owner finance. She became one of the sales agents. And she's been helping me for a couple of years now, but she's becoming an expert at being an owner finance sales agent. And I was just like, you know what? Not everyone can be you. Not everyone is passionate about the same things. Just find what you're passionate about and nail it. Because if there was a million Evans, if there was a million Rosas, the world doesn't work that way. And what is enough for you might not be enough for me. And what's not enough for me might be enough for you. And I always tell people, do what works best for you. I think coming into real estate, I was under this impression where I had to be someone, where I had to be the flipper, and where I
drive a Mercedes Benz.
Correct. Oh, I still drive my Honda. Okay. Yeah. No. Can I truly afford a Porsche? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I won't let the haters hate. Yeah. I can truly afford a Porsche, but I still drive my Honda because Honda is the ish. Okay. Yeah. You can drive that Honda for 2 weeks on the same gallon of gas and you're good on the same tank of gas. You're good for 2 weeks. I don't even have to fill it up, but that's what works for me. And how I said, like, I truly want people to get that fact. If you got anything from this, do what works best for you. Stay in your lane. I tell my kids this all the time, my nieces and nephews. Like, what did I tell you? What did Shita tell you? They call me Shita. Just stay in my lane. I said, yes. Because when you're too busy looking at other people's lane, you forget your God-given purpose. Don't you dare forget your God-given purpose. Yep. You stay in your lane, and God knew what purpose you had from the first day. So stay in your lane and you'll get there eventually, whatever that is. So I always get asked, where are you going? I don't know, but you're more than welcome to be my friend throughout the season. Yep. You're more than welcome to hop along. You can come along with me, but stay in your lane and don't look to other people. Do grind and thrive in your God-given purpose. That's what my thing would be.
I think the first time I ever met you, I was like, you walked into the room, you were talking. And
I'm scared.
No, my buddy Gerard was helping me out with the business at the time. And after you got done, we were kind of like, who was that? She's got life figured out. And even Gerard on the way home, we drove back down to Vaughan Army and we were staying in a RV park at the time. And my boss,
I remember when you lived there.
Gerard goes, I really want to get to know her better. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I really want to get to know her better too. She just seems like real people. Yeah. And I've always been very careful. Maybe because of you, probably because a lot of my own, desires, I've always been very careful. Whatever Rose is doing, I want to copy that as best as possible. Not like in real estate.
Not literal.
Not literally. Yeah. But I want to copy the type of person she is. Because I respect her from the very first minute she walked into that room. So
Thank
I
you.
know you are really careful whose podcast you are on, and you're really careful who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
But I just thank you for coming to be on my podcast, because that means more than anything.
Yeah, no, I'm excited, and I can't wait for my next birthday party.
Yeah, let's go party.
Thank you, Evan.